Center. And a good morning to you. Welcome to this Tuesday edition of the Art Lewis Show during this week of celebration. Celebrating 75 years of WSGW Radio on the air. Yesterday, August 11th, was the official 75th anniversary, but we decided all week long we're going to celebrate and bring back some of the folks who have made the station what it is over the years. And today is no exception. And later on, after the 10 o'clock news, Brenda Wilson and Christine Mahoney will be with us, names from the past. And for this hour, a couple of guys who used to hang out on a Sunday morning on a program called First Day, among other things that they did. Because with us this morning, first of all, from afar, on the phone, from wherever he is, we say good morning to Cameron Knowles. Cameron, good morning.
Art, it makes me sound like I've wandered away somewhere. I live in Durham, North Carolina. It's not that hard.
It's a hard concept to grab.
And that voice belongs to Randy Howell. And these guys were teamed up for quite a long time on Sunday.
We were. Morning, Cam.
Things.
Morning, Rand.
So, Cam, let me start with you because Randy had a question. You know, what are you doing now?
Sure. So I work with the Duke University Health System, and I work on the news team. There's a news team that's part of the marketing and communications team, and my area of focus is social media content and supporting teams with social media. So,
and I remember when you left, you went to work for some sports teams for a while. Of course, you were with the Saginaw Spirit here in the very beginning for several years, and then you didn't you go in the baseball world for a while?
I did, yeah. I had an opportunity to join the Durham Bulls Baseball Club, so that was a great experience.
Long after the movie.
Was poor, though.
Yeah,
right, exactly. Long after the movie, but I did get to meet Kevin Costner. Don't ask him, though. He won't remember me.
Cam has done everything I wanted to do. He worked for NASA, and then he works for a pro baseball team. Come on.
Yep, that's true.
And from there, I transitioned during the Great Recession of 2008, 2009 to running my own business, among which were a number of medical-type clients. I served as their advertising agency, and that turned into a role here with the health system starting in 2019.
All right. Excellent. And Randy, what have you been up to other than the fact you want to cross the street down the road to the competition?
Well, drifting around, basically. Yeah, that puts it in a nutshell. Since SGW, I did work for a couple of other broadcast entities and retired from the biz a couple of years ago. And now I have the perfect semi-retirement job you could possibly have. I host trivia several nights a week. So, and unlike you, I was a big fan of Quizline. Loved it.
I actually parlayed that experience into writing trivia for an organization for a while.
Oh, wow.
Did you really?
Quizline.
That's awesome.
Oh, boy, do I remember that with horror.
Yeah, well, I actually like trade line.
Trade line was just as bad.
I have a goat. I'll trade for a lawnmower.
I have a yard full of lawnmowers, but I'm not a business.
A yard full of lawnmowers and a couch.
Underwear, slightly used.
Yeah.
That's sick and wrong.
So let's go back to the first day concept. How did all that come along on the Sundays?
Well, that was, I believe, I perceived anyway, that was a brainchild of Rick Belcher, who you had yesterday. That was a great show. And basically what we tried to do was carry the morning team into Sunday morning the best we could. You know, it was just, we loaded up with, your Consumer Watch features and whatever, Kim Commando, all that kind of stuff.
Didn't you guys do a lot with movies, too? Talk about movies, Cam, or you do something?
We probably did that naturally.
And music,
yeah. Movies, music, that kind of thing. We basically it was these structured bits with banter from Cam and I, and Cam did the news. What are your memories, Cam?
Sure. Well, first of all, I do want to remember that I was the second news host. The late Fred Porterfield began,
That's
as
right.
I remember.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I succeeded him, which were big shoes to fill. And then the other thing was my personality and Randy's mesh very well, but it did not necessarily fit into what you would call a news persona for the news anchor. So I would usually have notes on Monday about horsing around on Sunday with Randy on the air.
But that's what made it great, though.
That was what certainly made it
all
fun.
that banter is what made that show great.
It did very well.
Carved out yeah, it did, and we were very natural with one another. It was a great experience.
Well, I want to take each of you one at a time here. Cam, a little history of your time at WSGW. When did you come and what did you do?
Sure. Yeah, I started as a news stringer, which meant that I would cover one or two assignments a week for the news team. And at that time, I was working for a radio station. Well, it's part of your group now, but I worked for WCEN AM in Mount Pleasant full time. I had a full time job there, and then I was doing some news stringing with the news office. Dave Maurer had hired me. And then my goal was a full-time job with WSGW because that was a kind of a career destination for people who wanted to work in radio news. But, there were a number of veterans in place and they weren't really hiring. So I kind of tried to cobble together any extra time that I could get inside the building. So I worked with Rick Belcher to become a board operator. Randy was one of the people who trained me to, sit on Tiger games or weekend content or whatever would happen to be. And then at that time you were affiliated with WIOG, which had its own research department for music. And I worked in the research department.
Yep.
So at one time I had 3 different jobs with 3 different teams in the building, none of which added up to a full-time job.
But it counted in the end.
I got to tell you,
I did.
last hour we were reminiscing about something that you were part of. Do you remember the DOD story where they were going to build finance centers around the country and you were assigned to go down to City Hall and wait for the word? And I called in 15 minutes early with the word. Shocked everyone as I went to Washington, D.C.
Art is on assignment this morning at 11. Where could he be going?
No.
What I will say, though, Art, is you taught me so many things as a mentor. And one of them was, even if you are not, quote unquote, a news person, you can still have a nose for news. And when I became a talk show host, I kept that same focus. I really wanted to stay credible as a news person.
Well,
so thank you.
You're welcome. But there's one word that describes it all, and you are the same way. Curiosity. You don't have to be a news person to be curious. And at that time, when that story was developing, I was curious as to what would happen if I could do this and that. When I convinced Rick to let me go to Washington, D.C., I had no idea what I was going to do. None.
Mm-hmm.
I only knew I had no credentials to get into the Pentagon, and I had no idea how I was going to do that. So that's when I decided on the spot when I was in Washington that I go over to the House building and go up to Barsha's office at the time and walked in at the exact moment that Rod Shemrai was getting the information. I was pure luck, Pure luck.
Well, luck is where preparation meets opportunity.
Very good. I like that.
I was going to say that too, but you said it more gooderer.
More gooderer. There they go. I think with that we're going to pause. I'll take a break and we'll be back talking to Cam Knowles and Randy Howell during this 75th celebration of WSGW Radio. Let me take a moment to talk about Quick Lane Freeland right on the McDonald Ford property. Quick Lane knows it's been a tough year for people with allergies, and they want to help you out in your car. They don't want you to have allergies while you're driving. They have a product called FrigiFresh, a hospital-grade disinfectant. And here's John from Quick Lane Freeland to tell you about it.
FrigiFresh. Hi.
We were all on the air together.
Yeah.
The attacks at September 11th. And the Clinton impeachments were going on, so we were a local voice to allow people to react and talk to that. My talk show was from 1997 to 2002, so there were just so many things that happened during that time period.
Yeah. And Randy, what were you doing?
Well, I actually had gone back to school to Delta College, and I started my radio career in the mid-'70s when I was 15, when I was in high school. So I had been in and out of radio by the time I was 18 so many times. And so I was already married with children, started going to Delta, and I'm like, well, I'm going to try to get a radio gig in this market. I'll start at the top. And I called WSGW and asked the name of the program director. And they told me Rick Belcher. I said, is he in? They said, hold on. And he answered. Years later, I found out he never answered the phones, you know. But, and just like Cam, I was basically thrown into the research department. And Rick overheard me talking on the phones. I'd already been in sales by that point in my life, too. And he liked what he heard, and then let me get my foot in the door broadcasting with board opping the Tigers and eventually worked overnights. And then one day Rick said, I have an exciting opportunity for you. And I said, is this Amway? And of course he rolled his eyeballs. And it was to produce the morning show with Terry and Dave. And that was right at the transition from going into full service radio, where you didn't play any music at all. What? That's insane.
The one song an hour we played faded away.
You're right. Exactly. So, and oh my goodness, I've been going through cassettes in the last couple of days, and I had Cecil Fielder's 50th home run on tape. I had an interview with Sparky Anderson, but most was the Terry and Dave show in the morning, and boy, lots and lots of memories. And of course, there's a tape floating out there of me and Cam, but I think it's getting the Peter Jackson treatment as we speak.
Let's hope it doesn't get destroyed.
Right.
Well, it's funny you talk about tapes because, as I was telling Randy and anybody else who's come in this week, there is not a single solitary tape recorder in this building anymore.
That's
no reel-to-reels, no cart machines, no cassette decks, nothing. Zero.
Mm-hmm.
It's all computer. We had to have somebody bring in a reel-to-reel recorder because we all have piles of tapes. No way to play
right.
it, So they brought in this reel-to-reel and set it in the room and set it up. It only runs at double speed and has no rewind, so it was useless.
And I don't know how you're supposed to store tapes, but they do degrade just sitting there for years in your attic. So
yeah, well, I've got a cupboard full here,
right,
that we can't do anything with.
Well, and they're making a bit of a comeback with VCR machines are very expensive now. And cassette decks and
glad
turntables.
To know that. Maybe I should sell mine.
Probably setting on some money, more money than you already have, Art.
Yeah, in my neighborhood, I am the archivist when it comes to audio and video equipment. I've had a neighbor borrow my VCR several times because he wants to show the videos his parents took of him to his children, and he doesn't have the equipment. So
there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I got stuff older
I even
than that.
charged him $5 for not rewinding the video.
Awesome.
I have a bunch of, you talk about useless stuff, I have a bunch of 2-inch quad video that I have no way of, way of playing.
Yeah.
So those days, it's interesting how technology has changed to the point where you guys wouldn't recognize it anymore.
Right. Well,
I've stayed in it, so I've developed with it. But it is so different in a radio studio.
I do remember that was such a good and bad thing, ultimately.
Automation,
Right.
Well, yeah, I think Randy and I probably both bridged the gap from analog to digital. But in the early days of digital, a clear format hadn't been chosen as far as like which way it was going to go. Would it be like an MP3 waveforms, or would it mimic audio? Do you remember the Orban machine that we had?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It was like I tried to replicate how an 8-track audio tape player worked, but there was no screen to edit. It was just like digital audio.
That's all it was.
Tape. Yeah. And now, of course, everybody uses waveform editors, what used to be called waveform editors, but they're, editing based on the waveform, which looks like an EKG or something like that to people who aren't familiar with it.
And you can be very precise.
I visited the Gladwin station that I started at recently, and this will be like mom's apple pie to radio people, the clickety-clack of the AP machine and the bells.
Oh,
and
teletype.
Do you remember when it typed red, when there was major stuff going down and all that? I used to have nightmares about that. Anyway, the Gladwin station still has the Associated Press.
Do they really?
Yeah,
they
it's
saved
really
it, huh?
cool, yeah.
Museum.
Yeah, museum piece.
That was a news guy's nightmare. You'd come in and the machine's out of paper.
Oh, I know. And there's no restoring anything from archives, saved to disk.
No, nothing at all. And I don't know if you guys were here. I think by the time you got here, we may not have. But when I got here in '74, we had 6 engineers.
Right.
And they all had to be out at the transmitter site because they were playing back all the segments. We didn't do anything in the studio other than turn the mic on, and we had the records and stuff like that. But all of the segments and the Paul Harveys and the news and everything came out of the transmitter site.
Oh,
we had an intercom, and we would push the button on the intercom, and they would play the segment.
Wow.
So
that was before my time, Art.
Yeah. That was from '74 till probably, I don't know. We might have gotten digitized or had the tower controls in the early '80s, somewhere around there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I had to go to the tower once or twice when there was a power outage to wade through. They were like the moat and the sharks, and you'd get inside the building and it was all wet, and you'd have to throw a switch to turn on the station.
Who was our engineer? Cliff
Graff.
I remember there was just serious stuff going down technically, and so I'm calling the transmitter site. He's trying to do his job, and he goes, "You want to talk? Let's talk." He was upset. I was interrupting him.
Well, that used to be the old question: how soon is it going to be done?
Yes,
probably as soon as I'm done talking to you.
Yes.
Right.
All right, guys, hang
amazing.
on. I got to take another break. We'll be back. We're talking to Cam Knowles and Randy Howell, all part of our celebration of the 75th anniversary of WSGW. All right, we're back with you. On the phone from Durham, North Carolina is Cam Knowles, and also in studio with me, Randy Howell. These two were partnered up for quite a long time with the First Day program and did other things around the station over the years as we celebrate the 75th anniversary all week long of WSGW Radio. Cam, what do you remember most? If there was a single thing you remember about doing the job, what was it?
Well, it's tough to narrow it down because, there were so many different experiences I had there. If one thing that just immediately pops to mind, I call it a trauma bond. Charlie Root and I were working weekends at one time before either one of us was hired full-time. And there was some kind of horrendous snowstorm that came through. And I was driving in from Mount Pleasant. And Charlie was coming up from, I believe, Mount Clemens, the Metro Detroit area. And, we were the only 2 people who could get to the station. So we took, 12 on, 12 off shift and would sleep in those edit booths over in the newsroom.
Right.
And it was like that old Warner Brothers cartoon where the sheepdog and the coyote are, coming off of shift. They're like, "Morning, Charlie." Yeah, "Morning, Cam." Grab a cup of coffee as you pass in the hallway.
Oh, yeah.
That one sticks out. But I, as a reporter, I covered all kinds of amazing things that happened to the community. Like Rick Belcher yesterday, I actually went and did show prep for this. Let me just rattle off a few of these. I'll be brief. But the Ford Knee Hotel fire in Old Town.
Yep.
The fire that severely damaged the Potter Street Depot. Wordsmith Air Force Base closing up in Oscoda. And of course, we went through Y2K scare, September 11th, 2001. And I did several news series that kind of looked at emerging issues throughout the community. One of them was the emergence of online access, like AOL, CompuServe, Prodigy. In 1994, I did a news series about that called What's Online. Another one that led to me being a part of the Bridge Center, which is still in existence in Saginaw. It was called A River Runs Through It, which discussed very serious
I remember that.
Ethnic and social issues in the community. So, yeah, I really, really had a ton of positive memories working there.
And then came the Saginaw Spirit. And if I remember right, you wrote something like a 6-page dissertation on how the Spirit should start and be publicized and all of that, which led to you being hired by the Spirit.
That was an exercise in hubris, I have to tell you. But
it worked.
I guess working in radio, that's probably a ground level requirement, right? The brief background to that is that we had seen so many hockey teams kind of come and go in the community. After the very real success of the Saginaw Gears in the 1970s and early 80s, that, and I love hockey, I really wanted to see this franchise succeed. Well, knowing now what I didn't know then, it was a ridiculous thought that anything that Dick Garber and Craig Goslin would be involved in would not succeed. But what I did was I put down on paper kind of how I built listenership and following for my show as kind of like a involvement in the community type exercise. And Dick Garber took a meeting with me. We went over these things. He set it aside for like 6-7 weeks. And then when he got his initial team in place, they came back to me and asked if I wanted to help implement that. And I was very flattered. So that was my path to the thing.
Yeah, that's, it's interesting because there's only 4 of us today that were around for the beginning of the team that have been with the team all that time. And that's Craig, Kay Pankow, Lindsay McDougall, and myself.
Yeah.
There were others come and go. I mean, Brian Proud is with the team today as the assistant general manager. He was there in the beginning, but then he left for a little bit and came back.
Yep. And
what
Dennis,
a success
Dennis
story.
the same way.
And, Rosie.
Absolutely.
I just played golf with Rosie the other week. He hadn't changed.
Tell him I said, hey.
I will. Funny story about Rosie. Number of years ago, I interviewed Doc Emmerich, the great hockey announcer, and he was involved in the IHL over in Port Huron back in the day. And I said, Doc, when you were in the IHL, what do you remember about coming to Saginaw? And he said, only one thing. And I said, what's that? He said, Dennis DeRozier. All right, guys, we're going to take a break, come back. We'll catch up with Randy, too, and see what he's doing these days. All ahead.
It's natural to have questions.
Now, first day with Randy Howell and Cameron Knowles. In Ypsilanti this year in the Little League program, the batter will step up to the plate wearing a chest protector. That's the batter, not the catcher. No kidding. Yeah. It's they made it part of the league rules. There's 3 Little Leagues in the States now that's doing that. Is it part of the Mutant Ninja Turtle craze? That's if kids were opposed to something like this, all you got to do is paint them green and kind of a shell pattern on there. They'd probably love it. But
a little memory from the first day. And why are you wincing, Randy?
Because I just can't stand that. That was the longest, 22 seconds of my life. It's hard to listen to
cultural reference. The Ninja Turtles cultural reference.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh boy, President Roosevelt to be thinking about this
yes.
one. That's what it feels like to me hearing that.
Yes.
So, Randy, what have you been up to?
Well, hosting trivia. Like I said earlier, it's the perfect semi-retirement job. It's I really enjoy doing that. I'm in and out of the bar from like 7 to 9, so I'm home in plenty of time for
folks.
bed.
He's in and out of bars.
Yeah, well, I started late doing that, late in life. Yeah, just basically doing that. I retired from radio a couple of years ago, and I really don't miss it. I never have until I started listening to all these tapes and everything and the fun we had, here at SGW and the pros I got to work with and all that. It's pretty cool.
What do you remember most about in radio?
Oh, I remember, there's Brenda right there, Blast from the Past. I'll never forget that face. I remember, community things like I convinced the Temple Theater folks to show The Wizard of Oz, and that just turned out huge. We had people coming in dressed as the characters. Terry and I did stage announcements. That was fun. Producing the morning show, coming up with silly bits, just like it was a rock station. We did things like bowling for produce, and we did some April Fool's shows, which you guys started all that, and then we took from you that silly concept. We did one. We called it Stoner's World. And there's trivia for you, Cam. Do you know who I'm talking about?
That's got to be a reference to Wayne's World.
Well, it is, but it's also a reference to a city manager.
Vernon.
Right.
Stoner,
so
right.
we talked about, we were on site with all the sound effects. We're building this amusement park, and it's going to be called Stoner's World. And I just took all the facts and figures from Cedar Point and doubled them. This roller coaster is going to have this many thousand feet of lumber and blah, blah, blah. And then it just got more ridiculous as it unfolded because you guys had done a nudist colony bit.
I'm just going to bring that up.
Yeah.
Eric Gile and I did a nudist colony
which
bit.
was hugely popular. And so every time we went on the air, we just made it more ridiculous. And, oh, by the way, this is a nudist amusement park and all that kind of stuff. So doing crazy stuff is what I loved. I mean, there is the serious stuff. I'd have to fill in for the Art Lewis show, which was trauma. But I ended up interviewing John F. Kennedy's best friend for an hour, which was fantastic, stuff like that. Just the daily challenge of trying to come up with something was just, I love that environment.
Now it's part of the fun of it.
Yeah,
part of the fun
for
of
sure.
It. So,
a sense of seizing the moment. Something's going on, let's do this. Just like your the story you shared about going to D.C. and try to scoop the other.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Pure luck, but we did.
Yeah.
So, of all these shenanigans you guys pulled off, it's all built to the point where we are now, where we can celebrate 75 years and have all of this history and look at the evolution. Really, I mean, you can look at the evolution of broadcasting through this station in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is due to the talent you guys brought to the microphones.
Oh, well, thanks for that. I'm still in awe of the professionalism right out of the gate this station has had. I don't think Detroit had anything on us.
Yeah.
Even in J.P. McCarthy might be untouchable, but, JR was always, the big deal, but we were right there.
We were commenting yesterday, Charlie played a bit that had, it was 4 for the morning. It was Rick Belcher, Fred Krell,
right?
myself, and Dave Maurer.
And Dave, right.
And as we listened to it, we all agreed we could take that and drop it into any major market, and it would have sounded fine.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely. And that was head and shoulders above,
yeah.
Well,
Cam, listen, we thank you for spending the time with us this morning and in your medical career.
Right.
Have a good life.
Yeah, good luck
They don't let me anywhere near the medical stuff, trust me.
Good luck in Durham. I know from hosting trivia, that's not even in Michigan.
Very good.
Well, Randy, you're still my hero, and I in retirement, I hope that I can host trivia somewhere too.
Oh, you'd be awesome at it.
Yeah.
They'd love you.
All right, guys.
I'd much rather play, but I'd rather host.
Right.
Cam, thanks a lot. Appreciate the call.